Nonprofit and philanthropic leaders devote their lives to the service of others, but sometimes they need a little help. Kristine Michie has been deep in the work and the play of helping changemakers grow their impact for decades. So whether you're ladling soup at a local shelter or attending a UN peace conference, you need to find the balance between the heavy work and a light touch so you don't burn out. And Kristine believes play is at the center of that. Welcome to the Playful Podcast, bringing fun to the serious work of changing the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Playful Podcast, and we are going to definitely be bringing fun to the serious work of changing the world today. We have a laughter and joy and play expert on. Every once in a while, we have somebody on like when we had Dr. Stuart Brown on, and we had Peter Williamson on. We have folks on who kind of make their living playing and laughing and teaching others how to do the same. So Dani Klein Modisett, sorry, I added an N in there. Modisett is with us today, who is the founder and CEO of Laughter on Call. Welcome, Dani.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here with a kindred spirit.
Absolutely. I was so glad when whatever in the ecosphere we kind of bumped into each other, and now here we are. So if you would, the origin story of Laughter on Call is just so brilliant. Folks, Dani's company teaches people how to use comedy and laughter as a healing modality, which I all of a sudden started to make it sound very serious, but it's not serious, although it could be towards a serious result, a positive result for something serious. So tell us a little bit about how Laughter on Call came to be and how the pandemic was a great pal and friend and helper in making it so.
Yeah. So true. I always bristle a little bit at healing because, and I'll explain why, because I was a comedian for 20 years and I taught stand-up at UCLA for 10, and I wrote a book on laughter and marriage called Take My Spouse Please, which is about staying, by the way. And anyway, so I was steeped in laughter and humor and making people laugh, and it's like my life thing. And then my mother, while I was on tour with that book, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And I kept her in New York for as long as I could. She was living in New York City, and then decided she should be out in LA next to me and my family. And so we moved her out on a commercial airline. That's a whole other story, but we did it. And moved her into a place that looked like an Upper East Side building, like a chandelier and a beautiful flowers, the whole thing, thinking that, she would feel comfortable. And but very quickly she realized she wasn't leaving, probably within a week, and she became depressed and withdrawn, and I felt terrible about it, and I couldn't make her laugh. And so this is like the inside scoop. Speaking of which, so I was at my dentist in LA, and because it's LA, she's also like a life coach. And I was like, I can't. I said, I don't know what to do. I moved my mother here and I can't make her laugh and I feel terrible about it. And I don't know, maybe I should just hire a comedian, like someone not her daughter to do it. And she said, yeah, that's a good idea. You should do that. So I put up on Facebook looking for a comedian interested in gerontology paid gig. Wow. And my phone rang within 5 minutes, and it was a friend of mine from New York. And a comedian in New York, she said, oh, wait, Dani, I know someone who's in LA and loves seniors. She's like sitting on park benches talking to seniors. Right. So I'm like, great. So I get in touch with the woman, and she comes over, make an appointment for her to meet my mother. And she comes over, and at first she's kind of doing like jokes, and then not really much of a response. But then she pulls up a chair next to my mother and she makes eye contact with her. And she speaks candidly and authentically in the moment. And she says, I know, you don't want to talk to me. No, you're probably thinking, who is this schmuck just talking to me? And thank goodness you're laughing. And much like you, my mother started laughing. And the light was back. And I was like, oh my goodness. Okay, yes, you're hired. And so I hired the woman for 8 hours a week. But what also happened, and this is really important, in that moment, after they laughed, she handed my mother a glass of water, and my mother took the water, because trust had been created, because that's
Oh,
one of the
yes.
byproducts
Yes.
of sharing laughter. I don't know, I'm telling you, you're an expert also, but it creates trust. That's why it's so valuable in all areas of life. And so that then I was like, okay, you're in. She came 8 hours a week. And it really did change her life experience. Like she started joining her community and eating and was just more open to the whole experience. And I wrote an article about that experience for AARP magazine. And I got hundreds of requests for comedians. I was completely surprised. People wanted comedians all over the world, London and Venezuela and Kansas. and and I was like, oh wow. Okay, like what? Like I guess I how could I not do this? Like comedians always need extra side
Work.
hustle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yep.
there's an exponentially growing number of people with Alzheimer's and who cognitive decline. And so what a perfect marriage. And so that was like the whole genesis of the whole thing. So that was the beginning.
Oh
You
my.
brought up COVID, which
Great.
I can get to, but that's the beginning.
Yes. Yeah. Well, okay, I love it. And you had shared some of that story with me as when we had our prep call, but I got to hear even more. I love it. I got to tell you, I'm picturing and wondering, did did groups start to gather either in your mom's room or out in the hallway, or did they ask your comedian to come out into the community area? How contagious was it?
Yes. So great question. And it's yes and. So what first happened is one of the offspring, a daughter of another resident, said, hey, I see what's happening with your mom. Can I have someone? And she's an actress. I'm going to forget her name, but she's a lovely person, Kristine. And so, yeah, the answer was yes, of course. So we started working with her mother as well. And then executive directors started hearing about it and seeing it. And so they asked me if I could train like the staff
Ooh.
in some of these tools
Mm.
because they're transferable. And as I've always said, there's people who have a sense of humor, kind of their lens through which they look
Yeah.
at life is of a comedian, but that doesn't mean you have to be a comedian to be able to make people laugh.
Mm.
Like there's a
Yeah. Yeah.
whole, that's a whole series of tools so in any event, yes, I started teaching then staff around the country too. And I love to get everybody together in a community. So you get the kitchen staff and the laundry people and the social workers
Oh.
and the executive director, and you get everybody in there because it not only teaches tools that they can use externally, but it builds community internally, which is really, really important in healthcare because of the high burnout rate.
Well, and I, as you're saying that, I'm picturing the organizations that so many of our audience members are a part of, and I'm picturing, an executive director of nonprofit organization, his or her board and board chair, and then the people that are directly delivering the service, whatever it is, whatever their intervention is, helping whatever their community they're helping. And then the people who work in the fundraising and the communications people. I mean, it's just so similar to what you just described, and how I love how and I'm so glad people are going to find out about this from the podcast, that this could be a tool they could bring into their organization. We talk on the podcast often. I'm asking these same people that I'm just describing, these philanthropic CEOs or nonprofit CEOs, about what tricks or tools do you have, how do you bring joy, play, and love into the work, because this is the kind of work that isn't, needless to say, done in a day, and we have to get up and do it again the next day. I know that you have coached, like you just described, then on a bigger level, you've gone into Fortune 500 companies and you have coached executives. I even saw that you've done some coaching with some members of Congress at some sort of a convention where they were gathered, about how laughter can be a good tool for policy making and even politics and campaigning and all of that. Talk about, gosh, how have you curriculumatized how have you created the curriculum that probably, I mean, you started out yourself as a comedian. Did you look back and think, oh, what are the mechanics of this that maybe just came naturally to you, that you teach to people for maybe whom it's not as obvious?
Right. Yes. So I just want to backpedal a little for your audience
Sure.
because they're not going to know how I ended up even at corporate, even doing that. And that
Yes.
speaks to what you mentioned about COVID. So
Yeah,
what
great.
happened was I was working with all the seniors and then COVID. And so then my CFO said, well, Dani, you have to close. Like you're done. It's a wrap because of, seniors were the most vulnerable population. And
Yeah, and those institutions were really struggling, right?
oh,
The
it
care
was
facilities. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
locked
yeah,
out, not
yeah.
happening. And this,
And it was,
remember,
as
was
you said, when well, I was just picturing the woman when she pulled up the chair and got close to your mom that the magic happened, and we were all about we couldn't be close to each other
oh yeah, like
during
not
COVID.
only
Yeah,
not close, like literally outside looking
not in the
in,
building. Yeah, yeah.
right. So, but we had a camera in the office because we were training comedians around the world to like in simple tools and Alzheimer's. And I will answer your question about curriculum. But I
Yeah,
think it's
great.
important to know this. So I started something called lunchtime laughter. I said, what the heck? We're going to close anyway. So why don't we live stream? Because we had the camera and I had someone working for me, possibly half my age, and she knew how to, run live streaming stuff. So we started this lunchtime laughter and it was Monday through Friday from 12 to 12:30. It was live, open to the public, no cost. We published a Zoom and thinking it was going to be for seniors and caregivers. And then within 2 weeks, perfectly lucid people were showing up who were just like stranded
I
and
need this.
isolated.
Yeah.
Right. And like needed connection. And not only that, like we felt it as a staff. And I know for me, like I definitely felt it. And I always joke about there was a guy in the 80s on the East Coast, Cy Sperling, I think his name is. He was the owner of the Hair Club for Men. And he had these
Oh,
really
yeah.
corny commercials. And he'd be like, hi, I'm Cy Sperling. And I'm not only the owner, I'm a customer. And he would like show you his plugs. And and so that I felt that way. I was like, I'm not only the owner, I'm a customer.
Oh,
Like I
nice.
was getting we were all getting the benefits of laughter, the endorphins and the dopamine and the connection, feeling a sense of community. So so then like HR people kind of got some buzz. And then there was an article in the New York Times about 3 companies making the pivot. And Laughter on Call was one of those companies. And then Harvard Business School, in the Harvard Business Review, there was an article written by Alison Wood Brooks, brilliant woman, and it was about the value of laughter. So we connected, and then she was like, "Oh, you need to be a case study for Harvard, for the business school, because that question of senior versus corporate is a great question for my people." So then it all grew from there. And we were running that first holiday season when businesses were like, they didn't know what to do. We were running events from 6 in the morning to 9 at night because we were working with India. So we would
Wow.
start at 6 in the morning because laughter really is universal. I mean, it's going to sound, again, preaching to the choir to you, but people sometimes forget the value of laughter and how it can be an actual tool in all our relationships and in business. And that was a great example. Like we would get people on from different countries and ask really simple questions. We had a super corny question in the beginning of like, if you were a dessert, what dessert would you be? It was a little hack. If you ask an improviser, that's a little hack. But when we were on with these teams in India, they would be doing research. They would put the dessert of their culture like in the chat and then educate everybody about it. Like it was such a
Wow.
community building experience and team building in the truest sense for companies. And then it kind of grew from there. And then I started doing coaching and in terms of how did I come up with the curriculum? Well, I had a curriculum from UCLA, right? So because I had that, I taught for 10 years, I taught stand up to non-pros, so non-professionals. So I
Yeah.
had, showing up, letting go of the moment before, timing, all of the kind of
Yeah.
tools,
Yeah. Yeah.
authenticity. So, yeah.
Well,
That's
yeah. So I mean, this of course, this conversation can go and probably will go in a bunch of different directions. I guess something that just prompted for me right there. I was just doing a recording that'll air just a little bit before yours earlier in the week with a woman who is a futurist and focuses on imagination as her product. And she's also a matriarchal wisdom advocate. And so she's like using imagination, working with women and wise women and all this. And she was going down to Tulsa, Oklahoma, to the Greenwood neighborhood, which is where the race massacre happened in the
wow.
1920s. I think it was 1921. And she talked about, going into that community. And there was, at the time she went, there was a live Supreme Court case where reparations that were due to the people who were the last survivors of that massacre. There was some reparations due, and it was in question because of a lawsuit whether that was going to happen. So she was going into a community that had this historical trauma and had a current problem. She said she's a playful. I mean, she sparks imagination. That's what she brings into the room, which is not that different than bringing laughter into the room, right?
Sure.
She said she spent about 5 weeks building trust going down there and building trust before she brought out her imagination curriculum, so to speak.
Sure. Sure.
And you talked about vulnerability, we talked about trust. Like, so gosh, I've done a lot of things on stage, but aside from karaoke, which doesn't exactly count, like I've never sung on stage and I've never told jokes on stage. I can give a good speech and I can, I can facilitate a meeting. Talk about the vulnerability involved in this specific kind of performance and how that can unlock the trust we need to build community.
Yeah, I mean, you just nailed it. Like vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
So people think, oh, funny, I got to tell a joke. Let me tell a joke. I'm going to open with I'm going to tell a joke. You don't need a joke. You need to have courage. You definitely need to have courage. So that's a whole other lesson in itself. Like, where do we find the courage? But
Yeah.
the answer in terms of connection, right? Because this is all laughter in service of connection. So, which it comes from the genesis of working in Alzheimer's, the goal was connection, right? Because I couldn't call it cognitive engagement on call. Like, right? Like nobody's calling that
That
company.
would have been a real dog.
Right. So, it's like, but it comes from having the courage to reveal something about yourself and bringing, and some quirk, some specific thing. I remember I was teaching a class and this woman, she's obsessed with squirrels. And it was so specific. And that is what makes you laugh, is like,
Yeah.
oh my
Yeah.
God, that's so specific. And that's one of the exercises to get there is, what's something about you that's unique and a bit obsessive that maybe someone,
Yeah.
and that's also, even from teaching just regular stand up, if you want to make your materials steel proof and no one can take your material, as you make it as personal as possible. It's also what
Yeah.
creates connection because it
Yeah.
it sets a tone of we're going to be bringing humanity into this
Yes.
conversation. And so you really, and I really believe it comes from the leader down, the kind of
Hmm.
humor, very important, but humor
Hmm.
itself in service of bringing humanity in the room. And I like one way to do that, of course, is through self-deprecation, something about yourself that, is quirky and unusual.
Hmm.
My big caveat for that is mostly not for women. I'm a little bit, I think we don't really need to do much self-deprecation, although I'm willing to do it. I will talk about my cooking or my defrosting in my case. But I'm not going to, I don't know one who really, unless you're really a comedian and that's your persona, is all you do is self-deprecating humor. That's great for a club. But in terms of using it for what the purposes that we want, which is, again, team building, creating trust, right? You don't want to use it about the thing you're hired to do. So,
Because you are the leader.
because that's people want to trust you.
Yeah.
So you don't want to come in and
Yeah.
say, I mean, I wish I was funny, folks, but I've been making it up. Like, you know what I mean? Like that. that doesn't make people feel good. They're like, what?
Yeah, I got a
So
big secret. I don't know how to read a spreadsheet. We
yes,
do, we don't want to hear that, right?
yes, yes, yes. I even hate
Yeah.
revealing that Excel is a panic-stricken activity for me. And nobody expects me to do Excel, but really, don't they at this point? So, yeah.
Well, this reminds me of examples people have shared on the podcast, and I have one of my own where when the normal kind of tone and day-to-day life and culture of the organization is not playful, and suddenly, and perhaps even if the leadership is a bit overbearing or even maybe kind of toxic, if suddenly you hear now, and I had this example myself where suddenly, and it was a workplace like that, and suddenly I heard that we're supposed to meet on the back patio to like eat popsicles and play frisbee. And we were already so burdened by this taskmaster boss and these lists and things we had to do without much support. It was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Was the feeling like that. I guess, that leader must have thought this might be a way to, but anyways, it fell flat. And I wonder about kind of does the laughter if a leader wants to try and use laughter, how do they learn what would be the authentic type that they could introduce in a way that will be received well and then effective for this connection that we're talking about?
Great. So I love this. And I'm curious for the little popsicle fest, was the leader going to be at the popsicle fest? Or that was like something for you guys to
Yeah,
do?
but that was almost made it worse because no one was going to be able to have fun around her
Yeah.
because
Okay.
she wasn't fun.
Right. Right. So I think the most important thing, and I'm a member of Vistage, which is a
Yeah,
international
yeah.
speaking, and so I
Hmm.
run these workshops for rooms of CEOs. And one of the most important exercises we do has to do with self-awareness. So
Mm.
that is a really essential piece of
Hmm.
being a leader. And maybe
Yeah.
that's where even more courage comes in because you have to know. Like if she came out on the porch and said, I know I can be zero fun. And that's why I
Mm.
scheduled this. I scheduled
Yes.
fun because I have no gift for fun. And you all would have been like, you're right. Thank you.
Wow.
So
And
it's
we would have had a little bit of given her some grace because she was
yes,
being vulnerable and self-reflective, and given her almost even thinking, oh, let's give this a try. I don't want to be so hard on her. Look at her trying. Look at
yes,
her trying.
yes,
Yeah. And she
yes.
actually was trying, but she didn't have that little bridging moment.
Well, it's very scary, and maybe
Yeah.
nobody's ever asked that of her.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Love it.
and a lot of times people's perception about leadership is to be stoic
Mm-hmm.
and stern, and especially women, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, do I need to say why? Because we're,
Right.
relatively speaking, historically, we're new to leadership. So,
Right.
so feeling like, well, in order to be taken seriously, I need to
Mm.
be serious.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
don't think I I don't think that's true. I think you need
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
self-aware and human and directive. You can lead
I
people.
had a guest on who talked about doing a male guest, CEO of a big organization. He did a cartwheel in front of his team at the beginning of a staff meeting. And what you just said that, I thought if a woman CEO had done the cartwheel, I don't think it would have been the same result. Interesting thing to consider.
I mean, it
Yeah.
is really hard. And I'll just share with you, I won't get into the whole thing, but I co-wrote this TV pilot, right? About a comedian working in a senior community. And my co-writer was a man, lovely guy. Uh, we shot it last weekend. It was all men, all men.
Oh,
And I hadn't had that experience. And they were tall men. So they're taller than me and they're men conferring on things. And I
yes.
just hadn't like felt that. I've been on a lot of sets, and I guess I forgot. Also, I think when you're there as an actor, you just come in and do your thing. You're not so conscious of the universe of it.
Yeah.
And so I just hadn't, I mean, again, like I went to Dartmouth in the late 80s, like not even late 80s, mid 80s, a lot of men. Dartmouth only went
Yeah.
public, and then, or only went uh,
Co-ed, yeah.
co-ed. Thank you for the word co-ed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Only 10 years prior. Then I became a comedian. That's all men. So I was very used to being in all male environments for a long time. Then I got into the senior world is not all men.
No.
So
Yeah.
I got used to being around lots of generous women and all that. And so there I was, and I was like, so I do think, right, like I felt like I couldn't be silly because I would not be taken seriously. It was hard enough.
Yes.
It's hard enough being a
Yeah.
woman. And then you want to be giggly, and it's like it's such a fun. Listen, hats off to the playful mission,
Yeah.
because it's one of the biggest challenges of the last 25 years for me is being funny, but also being serious about being funny.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Fantastic. Let's go grab our ice cream so we don't run out of time for that. Feel free to step out to get it out of the freezer.
okay.
And I will remind folks that we have had some different ice cream sponsors on the podcast over our 3+ years. And to Harker Brothers, based in Baltimore, Maryland, has been our kind of title sponsor. But then other times we have had some other folks come in, Salt and Straw, great ice cream company based in Portland, Oregon. And of course, the famous grandmommy, I should say, of them all, since we're having this talk about women in play and ice cream. Ben and Jerry's, of course, with their social justice mission at their founding. And so today, Dani are having Ben and Jerry's. And so when she comes back, we'll see what she chose. All right. She has 3
I don't
clients
know.
already.
This is very exciting for me. Yes. And for those of you tuning in, it's the morning. This is breakfast ice cream. So
Absolutely. Me too. I'm often, depending on, time zones, I'm most often recording from my home in Southern California. You're also in Southern California. So I'm also having breakfast ice cream. Sometimes my guest is having afternoon ice cream while I'm still having morning ice cream.
Well, this is
I
crazy.
chose half baked, which is this chocolate and vanilla ice cream with gobs of chocolate chip cookie dough and fudge brownie.
Amazing. I have vanilla fudge caramel.
Oh yeah.
Which is, I guess, self-explanatory. Vanilla ice cream with swirls of caramel and fudge. Good morning.
And I loved in your folks in my all important exchange of information in advance, I asked about favorite flavors. And Dani, yours and I, you were like separated at birth. I was like, love it all caps, exclamation point, especially chocolate, especially cookie dough, especially anything fudgy. So I could order myself the same things I ordered you.
Well, I have a whole theory about that. There's sweet people and salty people, like people who sugar people, and like people who eat cheese and salami. And
yeah,
I'm a sugar person.
Oh, like I could never have, honestly, I could never have another potato chip and I'd be fine.
Exactly.
But don't ever tell me I can't have more ice cream. Right?
Exactly. I live with potato chips, could not care less, but anything sweet. That's what makes us fun and funny.
Totally good. So we talk about when we're eating our ice cream, what's the scoop on how you came to care? And you kind of you just told your origin story of the work, but do you think there's something about you? Because Dani, I find this to be true. This truism with my guests. So there's certainly more than 3 types of people. For the purpose of this, there's 3 types of people. People who are kind of just focus on themselves and their family, and that's fine, just kind of stuff close into them. There's other people who see bigger problems and kind of think, oh, I hope someone's working on that. And then there's people who see the bigger problems and think, what can I do? And you're a what can I do kind of person. So any early memories about kind of that kind of global citizen or worldview that said, I'd like to be a part of making things better?
Well, it's such a great question. And I'm sure I know in my if your universe is your family, which I think it is when you're a kid, definitely I we moved from New York City to Westport, Connecticut,
Mhm.
and my family became my mother became depressed. Everybody was depressed, and I made clay puppets and told jokes at the table with the clay puppets to try to make them.
Mm.
Mom's really unhappy. I know. So is Dad. So clearly, my instinct in that
Yeah.
small universe was to have impact, and try to do something. And
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but I would say in terms of laughter on call, and then I love teaching all that. But what I would say in terms of laughter on call, the truth is, the moment I saw that woman make my mother laugh, I knew I was sunk. I was like, I got,
Wow.
how are you kidding me? Like, how could I not do this?
Right,
So
right.
yes, the emails and all that and the requests for community, that was wonderful. And it was like proof of concept or something. But like in the
Yes,
moment,
yes,
I thought, oh man, I got to do this. So
yes,
yeah, so there is
yes.
a higher purpose thing going on.
Yes, absolutely. And you mentioned puppets, so I wanted to just bring these puppets
No,
into
come
the.
on.
So I have these finger puppets and I use them. So my company, Impactful, we do retreat facilitation, and I'll have these puppets, finger puppets, just like scattered on the table when people come in. And you can't help but grab them and put them on. And then I have this funny moment where somebody will say, excuse me, what are you supposed to do with these? I'm like, you're already doing it. And they have them on when they raise their hand, right? They ask, what should we be doing with these? And it's just, it's for no reason. It's for no reason,
Yeah.
except for maybe the most important one. And I want to ask you about that. So how do you keep your spirits buoyed, and and what makes you laugh really hard?
Um, okay. The spirits buoyed is I dance. I'm like a
Mm,
full-on dance class person,
mm,
probably like 3 or 4 times a week. Like it's a priority.
nice, nice.
So that's how I keep my spirit. I'm very physical. I have to be very physical.
Mhm.
And I even think that's true certainly in dealing in the senior population, like people in cognitive decline, the more you can animate and create
Mm,
positive energy and positive and hope for a positive outcome. And that has to do with energy. Like it's interesting.
love it.
When I went up to Harvard Business School and spoke, and then they opened up the floor for questions, one of the students said, "So when you're hiring, do you hire the funniest person? Like, how do you hire?"
Oh,
And
great question.
yeah, and I was like, "No, I don't hire the funniest person. Like, I don't need a Chelsea Handler, Dave Chappelle, you name your fit, whatever. I don't need that. What I need is a joyful spirit, is
Oh, yeah.
someone who can come in and change the energy in the room.
Yeah,
Because sometimes that's not easy, right? And
yeah,
you need to be fortified. You need to come in with extra. You need to be an extra kind of person so
yeah,
that
yeah.
you can bring that. And we did an event yesterday for a lovely company called Sidekick in New York, and they bring people in to work with seniors. But it was New Yorkers. Now, I know New
Yeah.
Yorkers. I'm a New Yorker. So to ask New Yorkers to be silly and like play with puppets or whatever,
Mhm, mhm.
you know, there's a lot of pushback there. And you have to be able to have the kind of energy that goes, oh, I see you. This is probably not your game, but let's try it.
Yeah,
Let's try it. So
yeah.
it's a playful energy thing. And I think what makes me laugh is probably my kids. My kids make me laugh. My husband makes me laugh. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
that's just
You
pointing out
mentioned
the
joyful
obvious.
spirit, and I often am talking to folks, especially in this political moment, that are really, under assault. Right, the social goods sector is really under
Mhm,
assault, and these
mhm,
people. It was already hard doing this work, harder ever than before.
mhm,
And I have found, Danny, it has been so. The podcast has been going a little over 3 years, so it's been a really interesting. This last 3 years, right, has been politically really interesting, and I have I am so grateful and happy to say that I have heard this "you can't take our joy" is
mhm.
sort of a theme that the leaders I talk to are sharing. What do you see as the link between laughter, joy, justice, and change making that some of our audience might want to that can learn from you and hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, joy is something that as humans, we all can experience, we all have access to, right? Babies laugh, I don't know, 400 times a day or something like, we come in with the possibility for joy. However, I do feel that, food insecurity and
Hmm.
health insurance, like health measures,
Hmm.
this is where justice is invaluable. Like it's very hard to feel joy when you don't have health
Right.
care. And
Yeah.
so that's where I think it becomes a social responsibility if
Mm.
we believe that joy is part of the human condition. How do we as a nation then support all our people in having
Yeah. Yeah.
some peace and access to that? So, I really was thinking about this question because I don't, I tend to be, as we all do, I tend to be in my bubble. And yet,
Hmm.
when I reflect on it, I'm like, right, like joy, if I'm worried about how to pay my rent, mortgage, electric bill,
Right.
whatever, like I'm not very joyful. I'm not finding
Right.
joy in that. And
Right.
so I really wish that our consciousness could appreciate that more, but people tend to
Yeah.
only see what they see. And
Yeah.
so that's where it's really important.
I have asked, oh, and especially more at the beginning, and it feels like I've heard the answers so often that I haven't felt it's as poignant, but I have wondered and talked to my guests about, does it feel risky to be playful in this moment? And people might say, God, things are way too bad for you to be. Do you ever have that with laughter? Is it's this things are, Dani, can you just kind of cool it? It's maybe not the time for this laughter.
Oh,
Does that happen, and how do you address that?
that has happened from Hello with Laughter on Call when I
Oh,
first suggested humor, laughter, and Alzheimer's. Was like, what? What do you, that is
those don't go together.
no. And in fact, how insensitive of you. And
Oh,
yet, if you talk to people actually on the front lines in Alzheimer's caregivers, humor is their saving grace.
ah,
If they're denied humor, it's too dark. It's too dark. And in the current climate, it's funny you should bring this up because I write these weekly blogs because apparently I still think it's 1995. And um, and I've had to, and I always try to the message is laughter for connection, joyful connection, all of that. And I did feel for a beat, and still it's that it is somewhat tone deaf
mm,
to be talking about laughter in the face of war.
right.
And I actually had a boyfriend once say that he didn't want me going to comedy clubs because we were in a war. This is many, many years ago. And I was
Mm,
like, what?
mm,
Okay. But because I really think that laughter is exactly what we need. We
right.
need the release. And so what I've tried to do, again, it's about acknowledging the truth. If I just
Yes.
talk about, my favorite ice cream in this week's blog, that is a little
Yeah.
tone deaf. But if I
Yeah.
say, in light of the, I don't know if we beep beep show that we're all
Yeah.
living through, where can we find comic relief? So
Yeah.
it becomes more of a guiding principle rather than, well, everyone just laugh.
Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, we need to laugh. So how can we laugh? Can we jump up and down? Can we dance around? Can we put on finger puppets? Can we talk in a funny voice? What can we
Yeah.
do to
Yeah.
find laughter where we least expect it? And that is, that was the mission with Laughter on Call. And then what has been interesting is what I've discovered that it doesn't matter if I'm teaching at UCLA or writing a book about marriage, trying to figure out how to keep a marriage happy, or trying to connect in Alzheimer's, or working with corporate people and business people around the world. It's the same. It's the same
Yes.
tools.
Yes.
I mean, with
Right.
slight modifications, because in Alzheimer's, you don't ask a lot of questions about memory. You don't want to do things that create stress. But in terms of like showing up, accepting imperfection, letting go of the moment before, staying open to possibility, like these are all transferable tools. So, and for
Yes.
me, they come out of comedy.
And the universality of laughter, which is one of the things we talked about, kind of from the beginning, is foundational to what you're doing, is a theme that comes up. And ice cream is kind of the why I do ice cream on the Playful podcast. Is like, if you think everything is binary, left versus right, progressive, conservative, etc.
Hmm.
That's why people came up with the idea of purple, right? There's red, there's blue, there's purple. Well, ice cream is like that third thing. Laughter can be a third thing. You and I may not agree on this, but third things can be sailing, French bulldogs, travel. I mean, anything, if you can find that first hook with somebody, and
Yes,
laughter, of course, and
yes,
shared laughter can be
yes,
that. Okay.
exactly. Shared
So
laughter.
I'm so excited. Is there any kind of call to action or way that you want to leave folks thinking about what you're doing and how they can connect with you and take advantage of your great offerings?
Oh, sure, of course. So, yes, anytime you need laughter for connection, whether it's professional or family oriented, please go to laughteroncall.com and or you can just reach me, Dani, Dani, at laughteroncall.com. And more importantly, I do have a TED Talk that's coming out,
Ooh,
and I wish I could tell you when it's coming out.
great.
It's currently an editor's pick, and when that happens, they decide when they're going to launch it. But it is called What My Mother's Alzheimer's Teaches Us About Laughter. And
Oh, so great.
yeah, I'm
Well, we'll make
excited.
sure if it coincides, if it turns out that it coincides when the podcast is coming out, we'll blurb it then, but we'll also you'll let me know and we'll put it on our network when the time comes. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much. This was, guess what, so fun
so
and so
fun.
enlivening and smart, and I loved it. And I'm just so glad we got to know each other. And we're not too far away, so I'm going to come up and find you in person and have a little laughter and a little ice cream in person.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you. I love meeting again. Like I said at the top, kindred spirit, like playful
Yes.
laughter. Let's do it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming around to bring some fun to the serious work of change in the world. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to the Playful Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review it on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you know of a leader or organization that's doing good in the world and you'd love to help us help them amplify their message, I would love to have them on the show. Go to the show notes and click there, or go to impactfulinc.com/contact. And that's impactful with 2 L's, inc.com/contact. And let us know who you're thinking about. Can't wait to see you next time.